given who our guest is this hour, that it was quite possible that you might learn more about your religion, much about history, than you have in your entire life. My guest this hour is Anthony T. Browder, called many things: chematologist, if I'm saying that right, author, cultural memory specialist, someone who has taken more than 20 sojourns to Egypt, and has been someone who has looked at man's history from the onset of time, and who brings a unique perspective to these airways. Dr. Browder, thank you. I'm going to call you Dr. Browder. Thank you so much for joining us here.
It's a pleasure to be here, Rock, and I look forward to a stimulating discussion.
Well, let's start. I ask, and I'm going to ask each of my guests here, because I find this a fascinating subject. I asked Dr. Ben Carson, who I have tremendous respect for, the pediatric neurosurgeon from Johns Hopkins, who was our guest last year. Absolutely brilliant. I asked him the question. I said that in the Bible, it talks about Jesus as having hair like lamb's wool and hands and feet like burned brass. Mm-hmm. Now, if one takes that just about in any form, it would sound to me like he's talking about someone that looks more like Johnny Cochran looked than Howard Cosell looked.
For sure.
Now, on that particular subject, what color was Jesus?
Well, the issue is Jesus was a person of color. He was not a European. He was not a Caucasian. Egypt and Ethiopia are mentioned more in the Bible than any other nation. There's no part of the Bible that takes place in Europe. So it's a book written about people of color by people who lack color. So what people traditionally have a habit of doing is inserting themselves wherever they would like to see themselves. So whoever controls the image of Jesus controls the world. And that's one of the reasons why he's been presented throughout the world as non-African.
You know, I read something, and I want you to finish that point, pardon the interruption, but I read something recently that said, until the lion writes the story about the hunt, until that time, the hunter will always be glorified.
Exactly. You know, one of the mistakes that we make is believing that everyone who has written the Bible was writing the Word of God. There's no truth to that. One of the other mistakes we make is
now you make that in itself is an inflammatory statement to folks who approach this world, that the Bible is the inerrant, literal 100% Word of God.
That's not true. And anyone who has studied the Bible knows that that's not true. If you talk to any theologians, people who have gone to school specifically to learn of this text, they would tell you that there are over 500 different versions of the Bible, of this one book. There's over 3,000 different denominations where people have separated from other religious institutions because of how they interpret this text. The Bible, as we know it, is a book that was written by man. As a matter of fact, the Bible is comprised of 66 different books that were written by 66 different people over a period of 2,000 years. So this notion that one person sat down, inspired by God, and wrote all of these books is an unrealistic notion. And again, anyone who has studied the history of this subject matter would know that.
Then that really, you know, I come from a world of, part of what I've done in my life is I've come from the boxing world. Mm-hmm. That particular statement knocks out much of the premise of religion as it is taught and studied in modern times.
Right.
And past times.
Sure. Well, if we were to use a boxing metaphor, most of the people who claim to be religious are really shadow boxing.
Shadow boxing.
They're in the ring by themselves because they don't know what God is. All they know is what someone told him God is. And that's really the biggest issue that we're dealing with. If we're honest with ourselves, if we're truly honest with ourselves, then we will acknowledge the fact that most of the people who read the Bible probably read the King James Version of the Bible. And the King James Version of the Bible is the most adulterated version, one of the most adulterated versions in existence. Most people read the King James Version of the Bible, don't even know who King James is.
Well, which begs the question, if you're reading the King James Version of the Bible, you should attempt to know who King James was.
Well,
and how do you answer the question, who was King James? Give us a little bit about him. Give us his biography, if you will.
A short analysis of King James. King James is a man who would make Adolf Hitler look like Santa Claus. King James was a murderer. King James was known as being a rabid homosexual. He was often called Queen James by some of the members in his court. And what he wanted to do was to write an official version of the Bible that validated his worldview. King James comes out of the Church of England, and the Church of England was established because the King of England didn't feel it was necessary for him to take directions and instructions from the Pope. So they broke away from the Roman Catholic Church and created their own church. And so essentially what you have, if you look at the history of Christianity as it exists right now, is that whenever a specific powerful individual agrees with the mandates that come down on high, they simply walk away from that church and establish their own church. That's why you have over 3,500 different denominations. Martin Luther in Germany protested what the Catholics were doing. He posted his Reformations on the wall, protested. As a result of him protesting, he broke away from the Roman Catholic Church and established the Protestant tradition. And so within the Protestant traditions, you have various streams. So you've got all of these people who say that they follow the same book, but they all interpret that book differently. But when you get to the book, when you get to the original source material, then what you'll find is that original source material came out of multiple texts that were written by people of African ancestry thousands of years, at least 800 years before Abraham, who is considered to be the matriarch within the Jewish tradition. And so what you...
800 years before Abraham.
Before Abraham.
Okay, let me give out the number here. Folks, I know this is hot, but it's all right. The telephone number to call in, because I know you want to get involved, I'm told there's one line open, is 202-889-9797. We certainly welcome your call. This is a subject that I have really wanted to bring to the airways since I first started. We find there were many years ago when I attended a local church. As a matter of fact, it's right up the street, and it's called Union Temple Baptist Church. Reverend Willie Wilson
Yes,
is
indeed.
the pastor there. And one of the reasons that I had an attraction to his preaching was he talked about how religion is divisive. And if we really think about God, God is about love. And given a choice between, a word that talks about love and a philosophy that talks about division, I'm much more attracted to the word of love. So we have so very many offshoots of God, how we worship God, and so much that says that our way, and right now I'm specifically talking about what is the majority religion in this country, and that is Christianity.
Exactly.
And in Christianity, it states that except that if you don't get to the Father unless you come through, accept as your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Now, there are 6 billion people in the world. Mm-hmm. There are 2 billion Christians. That leaves 4 billion non-Christians. So y'all going to hell.
Well, that's probably one of the most powerful forms of intimidation. If you don't believe my way, if you don't call God by the same name I call God, then I can kill you, I can steal you, I can lynch you, I can castrate you, I can enslave you, I can do everything that violates the commandment of God, thou shalt not kill, if you don't agree with my interpretation of God. Those acts in and of themselves are ungodly. But people never stop to look at how specific religions have been used to commit some of the most heinous acts ever imagined.
Are you anti-religion?
No, I'm not. You know what? I feel very strongly that every person has a right and a responsibility to interpret the Creator through their own cultural lens, and no one has the right to come into your home and kill you or enslave you simply because you call the Creator by a different name. I submit, given the religious mandates that have ruled the world for the last 2,000 years, more people have been killed in the name of God than will ever be saved by God. So if we stop and look at this madness that has been going on, and that's what it is. You know, the madness is going on in the so-called Middle East. The madness is going on with the so-called war on terror. I just came from the South. I just came from Alabama. And folk in Selma, Alabama are still fighting the Klan, the same Klan that would burn a cross before they lynched my great-grandfather. You know, how do you reconcile these differences? You mentioned Reverend Willie Wilson a few minutes ago. Reverend Wilson wrote a book a number of years ago and talked about his experiences at Howard's Divinity School, and that every student in Howard's Divinity School learns a course, takes a course on Reverend C.C. Jones. Reverend C.C. Jones was the 19th century minister who wrote a book called The Religious and Oral Instruction for the Negro. His book came about as a result of white folk in the South being afraid that enslaved Africans were going to rise up and kill them. So after 200 years of this nation, the United States of America, forbidding enslaved Africans to be Christians, Reverend C.C. Jones came up with a process by which we can introduce the enslaved African population into Christianity by giving them specifically passages in the Bible that said that God ordained slavery, which means that God ordained that there must be a slave and a slave master. And he specifically selected those passages that said, slave, obey your master. And then they would find a black man who they could easily control, and they would give him these oral instructions, because it was forbidden at that time for black folk to know how to read or write. So he would give them these oral instructions, and after he had memorized these texts, they then, for the first time in our enslavement here in America, gave black folks Sundays off, so that we can sit out in the field and listen to this Negro now parrot what this white preacher told him in order to pacify the Negroes. And so it's that indoctrination which manifests itself in all of our churches, specifically the black churches, all throughout this country. Every Sunday morning, we get that interpretation. That's why we are so passive. That's why we are willing to turn the other cheek, but no other Christian American is willing to turn the other cheek.
We obviously, all as you are aware, I'm aware, my listening audience would be aware, that Sunday morning is commonly referred to as the single most segregated hour. From 9 to 10, 10 to 11 is the most segregated hour in America.
Yes.
I remember growing up in a Catholic church, and the symbol, the beautifully framed photograph of the Jesus that we knew was a very pale skin. He looked like a Swedish gentleman with long blonde hair. If Jesus, yet there was, again, if you look at the Bible, it talked about when Herod was wreaking his havoc, that Jesus was hidden in the land of Kemet. And so somewhere at some point I looked up Kemet, land of Kemet, and it was the land of the black.
That's what the word literally means. Kemet means the nation of the black people.
And as somewhat of a logical person, you know, I was like, well, if he was hidden there for some time, this blonde-haired, Swedish-looking, blue-eyed Jesus, why would you hide him in the land of Kemet? Right. So talk to us. You talked about 800 years before Abraham. Christianity has been practiced around the globe now for 2,013 years. There has been the comment that Christianity and the life of Jesus was the greatest story ever told. How do you respond?
Well, I would say that you take that literally. It is the greatest story ever told. It ain't the truth, but it's a hell of a story. It is a hell of a story. As a minister friend of mine told me years ago, the Bible contains truth, but the Bible is not true. So you have to know how to read it. It is a story of metaphors. It is a story of profound wisdom. It's a story of biography of a people's struggle against oppression. But the Bible is a book that was compiled from many different books. For example, most people well, let me back up for a second. You mentioned Ben Carson. Ben Carson is a Seventh-day Adventist. My daughter went to the Seventh-day Adventist elementary school in Hyattsville. The G.E. Peters Seventh-day Adventist. G.E. Peters was one of the highest-ranking black Seventh-day Adventists in the nation. He was from the Caribbean. And the Seventh-day Adventist headquarters was originally in Silver Spring, Maryland. At that time, blacks were not allowed to go to the Seventh-day Adventist school. So G.E. Peters, this proud brother, created his own Seventh-day Adventist school for black folk. It's still on Riggs Road. And so one of the reasons why I enrolled my daughter in the G.E. Peters Seventh-day Adventist school is that when I went there to interview the principal and the teachers there, what impressed me most was that every classroom had a picture of a black Jesus. Every classroom had a picture of a black Jesus.
And when was that?
This was in the 90s. It's in the 90s.
You know, I was born in 52.
Okay.
And candidly speaking, I never really saw a picture of a black Jesus until I was until I was in my 30s.
Sure.
So do this. You have spent an enormous amount of time in Egypt. I want to talk to you about that. My name is Rock Newman, folks. You're listening to the Rock Newman Show on WEAC Radio, 1480 AM. We can be seen and heard around the world at www.rocknewmanshow.com. You can call us and participate at 202-889-9797. We'll be back in just a moment.
What do you care about? We'll find out when the discussion continues after this on The Rock Newman Show.
Good boy. I got to ask you what we need. Soul food. Henry Soul Food. No, we need it. Soul Food. Henry Soul Food. You know I like it. Soul Food. Henry Soul Food. No, we need it. Soul Food. Henry Soul Food. Hit me.
Home of the sweet potato pie. Even the keenest taste buds will tell you the best food on the planet. Large enough to serve you and small enough to know you. So get to Henry's at 5431 Indian Head Highway, Oxon Hill, Maryland, or give us a call at 301-749-6856.
Soul Food. Henry Soul Food. What we need. Soul Food. Henry Soul Food. Do we want it? Soul.
This is Rock Newman, and you're back for this next segment. We're going to keep for the entire hour Anthony T. Browder. I think he is doing what the young folks would refer to as spitting knowledge. I would like to have your participation. Give us a call. We do have a line open at 202-889-9797. Before we take any calls, I want to tell you about, once again, something that I feel very strongly about. Our transportation needs are great in this metropolitan area. And we have a sponsor and advertiser that is Pohanka. And specifically, I want to talk about Pohanka Chevrolet at this time. That is your one-stop shop for all of your automotive needs. They have a huge inventory, awesome deals. They service all makes and models and are open 7 days a week. You never need to make an appointment for service, and they are absolutely open 7 to 11 to accommodate your busy schedule. You get the best price at Pohanka, and you get the best service at Pohanka. And also, we have a sponsor and an advertiser, that is the MGM Grand National Harbor. It is a facility that is coming from going to be sprouting from the ground in the not too distant future, down in Oxon Hill, Maryland, which is, I think, going to be named National Harbor, Maryland. I just want you to be aware of it. There's going to be an enormous amount of jobs created and influx of money going to come into the area. I think that it rising will have a tremendous benefit on the entire region. The MGM Grand National Harbor, and for all of your gaming and entertainment needs, MGM Grand properties around the world welcome you.
Giving you the real on everything from politics, sports, and common everyday life issues. This is The Rock Newman Show.
Hey, it's your boy Richard Fowler. When I took this journey to start the Richard Fowler Show, I understand that it was bigger than me. It's bigger than all of us, you see. The only way we can truly create change in this country and to the world is by informing ourselves, empowering ourselves, and understanding how important our voices are to the power structure in this country. That's why we did it. That's why we created the Richard Fowler Show. This is our time. This is our opportunity. And most importantly, this is our movement. So join us every Friday night from 8 to 10 when we tackle the big questions of the day, when we talk about the real issues, when we get rid of the talking points, the talking heads, and the smoking guns, and we talk about how these issues really affect you. We can't wait for you to join our movement every Friday nights from 8 to 10, only on We Act Radio.
Real talk, real issues, real life.
I got a new sheriff in town.
We now return to The Rock Newman Show.
This is the Rock Newman Show on We Act Radio. I understand earlier I might have said that you could hear us around the world on the World Wide Web at the Rock Newman Show. Let me clarify. No, at the rocknewman.com, but it's rocknewmanshow.com that you can see and hear us around the world. Again, the number to call to participate is 202-889-9797. And I want to really thank this gentleman for holding on the line. Corey, you're on the Rock Newman Show with Anthony Browder.
Hey, how you doing, Anthony? Mr. Browder, I should say. I'm sorry. I guess my question is a little different from what y'all are talking about, because I'm pretty much in line with a lot of your research. But it is said that Joshua studied at a mystical school in Kemet. But there was many people that studied at that school. Is there a way you can find out about what those teachings were at that school? I understand alchemy could have been one of them.
Well, you know, the word alchemy comes from the word alchemet. It's the knowledge of Kemet. The word chemistry comes from the word Kemet. So we're talking about sciences, philosophy, and traditions that began in the Nile Valley, which is the place where one will find the oldest documented civilization known to man. This idea of the mystery schools is a misnomer. That was a term that was given to this African educational system by the Greeks. So to the Greeks, what the Africans were learning in Kemet was a mystery, hence they call it a mystery school. It's been said that all of the wise men of the past traveled through Kemet. It's been said that Yeshua ben Pandera, the man that we know today as Jesus Christ, during the period from ages 13 to 30, the missing years of this person, it was said that he studied in Kemet and that he was one of a host of people who were known as saviors of their people. who studied in Kemet. A lot of that information has been suppressed, but you'll find by going back and reading some of the ancient texts, information that so closely parallels the stories in the Bible and the story of Jesus, that all one has to do is to realize that they originated from the source, which is in Kemet.
Well, let me ask this. The Holy Trinity.
Yes, yes.
The Holy Trinity, as we know it, the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost.
Right.
Talk to me about ancient Egypt and thousands of years before what we commonly know now as the Holy Trinity, the similarity in ancient Egypt life.
Sure. Let's put the Holy Trinity in context. We're told that Jesus was born in the year 0, but new research shows that the person that is identified as Jesus was probably born about 4 BC. But Jesus was not declared the Son of God until 350 years after he was born, after the Council of Nicaea. It was not said that Jesus was born of a virgin until some 350 years after his birth. It was not declared that Jesus was part of this Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, until 350 years after his birth. So something significantly happened that changed the story of this man, and that happening took place in 325 at the Council of Nicaea.
Excuse me 1 second. Sir, if I'm hearing some background noise, so if you could either mute that, or if we could take the call out.
Yeah,
Okay.
hang up, Corey. Yeah, thank you. But listen, the thing is, if we look at Kemet as the oldest documented civilization on this planet, we will find in Kemet the footprint for what became Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The first story, you referenced the first story of a Trinity. The first story of a Trinity comes out of the story of the founding parents of ancient Kemet. That is a man by the name of Asar, his wife Aset, and their son Heru. According to that story, Asar, and this story is at least 6,000 years old, 4,000 years older than the story of Jesus the Christ. Asar had united the two lands of Upper and Lower Kemet, took as his wife a beautiful sister by the name of Aset, and then he traveled throughout Africa to share his knowledge with his brothers and sisters on the continent, literally lifting them out of darkness. In his absence, Asar's brother Set plotted to murder him, and ultimately, cutting through it now, his brother Set not only killed Asar, but cut his body into 14 pieces and scattered them throughout the land. Set went looking for the missing parts of her husband's body. It was said that she found 13 of the 14 parts of her husband's body. And as she reconstituted her husband, literally remembered him, wrapped his body in bandages, and created the first mummy in recorded history. So then, she set about to bury her husband. And before she buried her husband, she grieved. She grieved because she was still a widow. She was a widow. She grieved because she was still a virgin. They had never consummated their marriage, and thus there would not be an heir to the throne of her husband. And so, recorded in Kemet over 6,000 years ago, the spirit of this deceased man, Asar, came and impregnated his virgin wife, Aset. So I can take you to the temple of Abydos in Egypt today to show you that scene carved on the walls of the impregnation of Aset. And then Aset, 9 months later,
So 4,000 years earlier,
before
there was an immaculate conception.
Yes. There was a virgin, a woman who was impregnated by the spirit of a deity, if you will, because Asar was elevated to deity status among the people of Kemet. And so his spirit impregnated his wife Aset. 9 months later, she gave birth to her son Heru on December the 25th. Heru was born of a virgin, and the story of the birth of Heru so closely matches the story of the birth of Jesus the Christ that if you put the two stories side by side, you will see that one is copied from another, but the copy, the story of Jesus the Christ, came 4,000 years after the original. So once you've seen the original story, the truth will present itself to you. So then Heru's job was to restore the throne of his father, Asar, and when he conquered Set, and reclaimed his father's kingdom, then a miracle occurred in Africa. We're not used to thinking of Africa as a place of miracles, but that miracle was, that second miracle, aside from the spiritual impregnation of Aset, that second miracle was after Heru reclaimed his father's throne, then his father Asar was resurrected from the dead. He was the first person in recorded history who was said to have been resurrected from the dead. And that symbol of the resurrection of Asar is a symbol that Heru placed in front of the temples of Kemet. That symbol was known in ancient times as a tekken. We know it today as an obelisk. The tallest obelisk in the world is called the Washington Monument. So that monument that sits in the geographical center of the original 10-mile square of Washington, D.C., is a 6,000-year-old symbol that represents the resurrection of the first human being on this earth, Asar, not Jesus the Christ. And so when you look at this story of these two people, Heru and Asar, the stories were combined by Constantine during the Council of Nicaea in 325 BC. Heru represents the process through which earthly man can align himself with spiritual consciousness so that he can do good on earth. And then Heru represents the process by which that earthly man, after he dies, is resurrected and assumes his rightful place in heaven. So Heru and Asar become Jesus Christ when this story is reinterpreted by Europeans thousands of years later.
So that truly, Mr. Browder, that truly throws a haymaker
Sure.
into the beliefs and the cornerstones of Christianity as we know it now. So is it your position, and I'd like to, hear this in a very sort of understandable for dummies like me to be able to understand, would it be your position that the very tenets of Christianity, the Immaculate Conception, the birth of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, is something that is a story taken from ancient Egypt and sold 2,000 years later as being original?
No question about it. No question about it. The baptism, the first baptism. And man, you can go to Kemet today and see scenes of baptism carved on the walls of ancient Kemet. And so all the tenets of these traditions, resurrection, the Ten Commandments of Moses were derived from the 42 admonitions of Ma'at. And James Henry Breasted, the father of Egyptology in the United States, the founder of the Oriental Institute at the University of Chicago, got in trouble in 1935 when he said that the Ten Commandments were derived from the 42 admonitions of Ma'at, and there is no commandment, thou shalt not lie. Okay, thou shalt not bear false witness against your neighbor. But for folk who are not your neighbor, you can say anything you want to. I mean, that's what's implied. And again, going back to what theologians know of these teachings, the Ten Commandments come out of the Torah, teachings that Moses gave his people. They only apply to Moses' people. They don't apply to everyone else. So those Ten Commandments were guidelines for one segment of people to apply toward their own, but they don't apply to others who are outside of your clan.
The impact, give me please, the impact on ancient Egypt, Kemet, the time frame that you're talking about. We've talked mostly about Christianity,
Right.
but that time period, the research, the examples given on Judaism and Islam.
Well, again, we have the story about Jews coming into Egypt and in a small number and leaving with their numbers increased tenfold. Right? We have the story of them coming into Egypt. And essentially, if you look at the history, they came into Egypt without a God concept, and they left with the knowledge that transformed their consciousness. And they then wrote the story of their struggle through their own cultural lens to give them a place on the world stage among other human beings. Gary Greenberg wrote a book. Gary Greenberg is an attorney, a Jewish attorney who practices in New York, wrote a book called 101 Myths of the Bible, in which he stipulated that all of the texts in the Torah were derived from Kemetic texts. And when you compare the story, specifically the king's list that is in the temple of Abydos, the list of all of the kings from the beginning of Kemetic times up to the time of Seti I, who was the father of Ramesses II, that king's list closely parallels the patriarchy of the Jewish tradition. It's the same list, just written thousands of years later in order to give that group of people a place in history that they created for themselves. They call themselves the chosen people, and the people are clear. Free people choose their relationship with the Creator. Only enslaved people and conquered people are forced to take on the religious traditions of their conquerors and enslavers. So I dare submit to you, Rock, and your listeners, that the reason why Africans enslaved in America are Christians because our owners were Christians. Had we been enslaved in another part of the world, enslaved by Muslims, we'd be Muslims. So all conquered people take on the religious teachings, take on the language, the philosophy, the education of their enslavers. So if you can step out and go beyond that enslavement, and that's one of the reasons why, after 30 some odd years of researching our history, I began to see myself as less of a historian and more of a memory recovery specialist. Our job is to restore our memories before our worlds were turned upside down. And when we do that, we will find that we were the first human beings to conceive of a God concept, and everyone else only developed a portion of that God concept only after they came to our homeland, sat down at our table, heard us talk about what it meant to identify with a higher power, what it meant to be civilized, and they took the portions of that they could understand, that they could stomach, and took that back home and began to introduce that to their people as their understood relationship with the unseen.
We're here at the WEAC Studios on Martin Luther King Avenue. This is the Rock Newman Show, 1480 AM, and again, we can be seen and heard around the world at www.rocknewmanshow.com. You instituted something that I found pretty fascinating in the Washington, D.C. area.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Egypt on the Potomac.
Right.
Tell us what led you to do that and what Egypt on the Potomac is all about.
Well, I've been to Egypt 48 times over the last 32 years. And it was my second trip to Egypt in 1985. Upon returning to D.C., I began to notice that there were profound similarities between structures here in D.C. and identical structures that I had seen in Egypt that were created thousands of years earlier. So I did my research. I researched the history of the layout, design, and development of Washington, D.C. And in 1986, I introduced what was then known as the Afrocentric Tour of Washington, D.C. We now call it the Egypt on the Potomac. And essentially what comes out of that research is there was a concerted effort on the part of America's founding fathers to recreate the architectural, symbolic, and spiritual essence of Nile Valley culture and civilization here in the Potomac River Valley. And so everything from the layout of the city, the original design of the city, the location of the city was all designed to replicate geographically, symbolically, and spiritually the essence of Nile Valley culture.
Now, let me ask you, what is the sense of how the founding fathers,
Sure.
those who laid out the country,
Mm-hmm.
how were they aware of the lands of Egypt?
Many of them were Masons. And so what you find in Masonry is Masons claim a direct lineage back to ancient Egypt. They say that the first Mason, the first builder of stone was Ramesses II. Ramesses was late in the game, but if you follow that definition, the first builders of stone were African. Imhotep designed the first man-made structure of stone, the step pyramid of Zoser, which was built 2700 BC. And BC in this instance could literally mean before Caucasians. So 2700 years before they developed culture and civilization, we still have a testimonial of the first man-made building ever created. A 19-story skyscraper is still standing there. So Masons, Europeans who studied the so-called mystery system of ancient Egypt, realized that ancient Egypt was the foundation of humanity, culture, civilization, and religion. So they saw themselves as the custodians of that knowledge. So when the Masonic founding fathers developed this country, they decided to recreate Egypt here. So if you look at on the back of the dollar bill, the symbols of the Great Seal on the back of the dollar bill speak to that. That's why you have a pyramid on the reverse of the Great Seal. That's why you have the eye above the pyramid. The eye above the pyramid, Brother Rock, is the eye of Heru, the son of Asar and Set. That's why you have the Washington Monument is in the geographical center of the original 10-mile square of Washington, D.C. Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution states that the planned capital of this nation was to be a 10-mile square. Why a 10 mile? Why a square and why 10 miles? That's all part of Masonic lore. And the object that was placed in the geographical center of that 10-mile square is the Washington Monument. No building could be taller than that structure. 555 feet. What does that mean? The number 5 is a number that represents man. Right, so that monument is 555 feet high, 55 feet wide. So all of the measurements associated with that number are 5. The number 5 represents man. And so the question is, who is the man that monument represents? We're taught that it's George Washington. But if you go inside of the monument, above the elevator is a plaque of George Washington, the elevator that takes you up to the observation deck on the 500-foot level. Above the image of George Washington is a symbol called the Heru Badet. That is the symbol that was carved above the entrance of every temple in ancient Egypt. That was a symbol that came to represent Heru defeating Set and restoring his father's kingdom.
And it's right downtown.
It's right downtown.
DC.
But most folk don't know.
Yeah, and look, I go by and I found out that if you look from the Capitol to the monument to the Lincoln Memorial, there's a straight line.
Exactly.
And from the Jefferson Memorial to the monument to the White House, it's a straight line.
Exactly.
They intersect in the middle and make a cross.
At the Washington Monument.
At the Washington Monument.
Exactly.
Now, on the other side of the White House starts 16th Street, Northwest Washington, D.C. Talk to us about the significance of 16th Street and that supposedly there are more religious institutions on 16th Street than anywhere else per capita, square mile, whatever it is.
Right. There's a park on 16th Street called Meridian Hill Park. 16th Street was the original meridian line for Washington, D.C. Meridian line is a point that this is it's a north-south axis, a line of longitude that marks the position of the sun at high noon. The sun is one of the oldest symbols for God, the Creator Almighty. So when the sun sits on that meridian line, the position of the sun is known as Ra or Re. And that meridian line represents a corridor or spiritual light that is funneled through the White House all the way down 16th Street. That is the reason why you have more churches, more Masonic institutions, and religious spiritual centers on 16th Street than any other 7-mile stretch of land. In the country, 16th Street is also called Avenue of the Churches and God's Boulevard. It's no accident that that street is there. And one other key point is that 16th Street, the number 7 represents resurrection or heaven. So 1 and 6 is 17. 16th Street is 7 miles long. From St. John's Church in front of the White House to its termination point at Eastern Avenue is 7 miles. The number 7 represents resurrection of God or heaven. 16th Street also is the 77th degree of longitude on the map. That's not an accident. These people did their homework. See, when you're in a position of creating a new nation, what you want to do is to study the best examples of nation building that ever existed. So these America's Masonic founding fathers went back through their history and found the best examples existed in Egypt. And so they literally recreated Egypt, the Nile River Valley and the Potomac River Valley. And the issue is, you may not really understand what this is all about, but this location, these shapes, these alignments generate specific energy. And those who understand that that energy is present and know how to use that energy will empower themselves to do things that the average person cannot do.
Modern technology has yet to figure out or to be able to duplicate the pyramids.
Of course, the pyramid, if you can just imagine, Great Pyramid of Khufu is a building which from the time of its construction around 2400 BC until 1884 when the Washington Monument was built.
You're casually, as you would do, throwing out numbers.
Right.
But I want my listening audience and those viewing around the world to hear you and to hear you well. 2,400 years, 2,400 years before the birth of Christ,
right.
What we know as modern society. 2,400 years before then, the pyramid.
Right. The Great Pyramid of Khufu was built. And so that building, if you can imagine, it's a building that's two and a half blocks wide by 2.5 blocks wide by 2.5 blocks wide by 2.5 blocks wide, comprised of over 4 million stone blocks, which weigh an average of 2.5 tons each, as much as a car. There's enough stone in this one building to make 30 Empire State Buildings. It is still today the most perfectly aligned structure, the true north in existence. And no, it was not built by Jews when they were enslaved in Egypt. Jews were never enslaved in Egypt. Jewish scholars are beginning to acknowledge that historical reality. So if the Jews were enslaved in Egypt and the pyramid was built 2400 BC before Abraham was born, then how can the Jews create something before they came into existence? When you study our story, our history, you realize that other people's story just does not hold up. And that in and of itself is a mind-freeing experience.
What's your sense of how, because you're talking about a 4,500-pound stone that was lifted more than 19 stories.
Well, the Great Pyramid of Khufu was originally 48 stories, 480 feet tall.
Like I said, more than 19 stories.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your sense?
Well, brother, the truth of the matter is, I don't know how it was built, but I know, as you said correctly, the technology does not exist today to replicate that structure. There are 5 stones in the inner recesses of that building that weigh in excess of 70 tons, more than a railroad locomotive. We don't have the technology today to move one stone that weighs 70 tons. And so that is the mystery, and that is also one of the reasons why we are taught that Egypt is not in Africa. Egypt is supposedly in the Middle East. There's no such thing as the Middle East. What folk are dealing with is removing Africans from Africa, removing African history from the story of African people, and assign it to other people, whether that history is political history, scientific history, or religious history. Our story has been stolen and has been used by others to empower themselves, and that's one of the reasons why we are the most physically, emotionally, economically, and spiritually disenfranchised people on this planet, because we don't know our story. We listen to everyone else's interpretation of us, and all of those interpretations present us at our lowest. So until we can step back and be courageous enough to identify that African that is in us and begin to see the world through their eyes, we will always be inferior to others.
The
And
Greeks,
worship the gods of others as opposed to worshiping our own gods. We don't even know the names that Africans use to describe the unseen creator.
the Greeks and Romans were the first intelligent philosophers.
If you've been miseducated, you would say that. And Carter Woodson told us all about the process of miseducation.
That's a story that's been told, and I've heard you before speak on that subject. That long before Greek and Roman philosophers
Right.
spoke their words, there were African philosophers and a university. That was the original university. Share a little bit about that, please.
All right. Greece, the first Greek writer of note was Homer, who wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey around 850 BC. Rome becomes a nation state when Romulus and Remus found the city of Rome about 735 BC. But I already mentioned to you that Imhotep built the Step Pyramid 2700 BC. We have numerous examples of Africans building universities, the first people to read, the first people to write, the first people to reason, the first government, the first nation state, the first civil servants, the first architects, engineers, philosophers, physicians were all African people. And so that's one of the reasons why I've been going to Egypt for the last 33 years. I take people on study tours to Egypt every summer. We're now excavating a tomb in Egypt right now. And in this tomb that we're excavating, we're the first African Americans in history to be funding and excavating a tomb in Egypt. And in the tomb that we're excavating, a tomb of a 25th dynasty priest by the name of Karakamun, who was the priest at the temple of Ipet-Isut, now known as Karnak Temple, which is where the temple of Amen can be found. Amen, yeah, that word, Amen, which is an African word, a Kemetic word, which means the unseen presence of God Almighty. So this priest whose tomb we're excavating, Karak Amen, his name means, Amen, the unseen presence of God Almighty knows my spirit. His job was to do the morning libations in the Holy of Holies of that sanctuary, every morning before sunrise, to say the words, to evoke the presence of the unseen presence of God Almighty, so that that spirit could literally inspire the 83,000 people who worked in that city within the city. It's about twice as large as the Vatican, brother. This is the largest temple complex ever created by human beings on the earth. And the brother who did this important job is the brother whose tomb we're excavating. We found in his tomb pyramid texts, the oldest texts ever recorded by human beings, that specifically identify the process of the salvation of the soul, that there is a soul to be saved, the salvation of the soul, the recitation of the 42 declarations of innocence, and identification of the place where the souls go to be reborn. We've got that in this tone. So I don't have to make anything up. I only talk about what I know. I only talk about what I study, and I present the facts, and I don't deal with what I believe. Belief is something you accept without proof. I deal with things that are rock solid, that I know are real, and that becomes my reality.
I received a textbook response to my, when I said that Anthony Browder, I said textbook, Facebook response, when I promoted that you were going to be on the show in the 10 o'clock hour today. And one of the responses was, why are you having that bigot on? He promotes an anti-white agenda. He promotes an anti-Caucasian agenda.
Well, that's not true. What I promote is truth. And I think truth needs to be told, to talk to everyone, black and white, brown and yellow. Everyone needs to know the truth because everyone has been lied to. And my whole purpose of sharing this information with anyone who's willing to listen is to get people to begin to see themselves through new eyes. If we realize that Africans were the mother and fathers of humanity, which genetically that has been proven true. Every person on this planet is of African ancestry. There's no such thing as race. Race is a false construct that was created by racists at the University of Göttingen in 1777 to turn the world upside down. So if people were conscientious enough to want to take the time to learn the truth, to study, and to read an unbiased interpretation of history. So what that means is in order to develop an unbiased study of history, you got to read everybody's story and then compare the stories and let common sense prevail. And when people do that, they begin to change their mind. So a person who would make that comment obviously is someone who hasn't read very much.
You know, there's a local apparel store in the metropolitan area. It's run by a friend of mine. And he named his business and his apparel, We Are One. You talk about the original man being of African descent. And part of what I fundamentally so much believe here, and what I'm going to try to communicate through these airways, is that we are one. And what you shared with us today goes a long way, I think, to opening people's eyes to understand that at the end of the day, in spite of how the story has been retold so many different times with much fallacy, that ultimately we are one. Thank you so very much for being on the Rock Newman Show. I want to, welcome you back at any time. I'd certainly like to have you again. That wraps it up, folks.